Hello and welcome to the week 3 of 30 days of Azure AI. Talila, I'm so excited about this. And one of the exciting things about this week is we are talking about data science.
Absolutely.
And I feel there is the learning curve this week for me was like this. And I've learned so much where coming from a developer background, it was very exciting for me to actually look at the other aspect of MLOps
Yep.
as well as understand new things which I have not been doing that in the developer world. So I'm so excited about this session, Devira. So what were your views in the start, like when you saw the topics or when you saw the titles of the week 3?
When I saw the titles, I was very happy to see that there's so much focus on MLOps. And as a data scientist, this is sometimes a weak point for a lot of people because you focus so much on the data science aspect, the training, the algorithms, the data. And sometimes you need to build that muscle on everything that surrounds it so that your model can see the light of the day and be in production. So you would work with an MLOps engineer sometimes, but sometimes you don't have that luxury, so you might need to build that muscle yourself. So this week, what was exciting for me wasn't so much learning how to do the data science, but how to be a more productive data scientist. So I can assure you, learning curve for me as well. I was very happy to spend some time and practice a lot of the aspects that we will talk about in a moment.
That is great. So let's deep dive into what we saw this week. So starting with this, the first article was a quick start for me. So in the first article, I learned how you can actually go ahead and start development with your machine learning models using Azure ML. And one of the new things which I saw over here is you can actually go ahead and create the resources for Azure ML using multiple different ways. So I used to do that using the Azure portal itself.
Yep.
But what I saw in the article is you can actually go ahead and do it through Azure's ML CLI. So there's a component you can add on on top of CLI, as well as you can do it through Python SDK. Now, one of the questions which came to my mind, Talila, is which method should I use in which place?
Yeah, absolutely. Classic question that we need to get clear as well. So I love Azure ML as a studio because it's so intuitive. It does help you through the steps. And when you are experimenting with one model, you're not yet at the stage where I'm going to deploy it, let alone scale it. It's a great tool for you. But then comes the idea of, well, we're getting somewhere. I think now we need to start about talking about automation, maybe replicating, maybe also making it available to other people. So that's where Azure CLI and Python SDK can help you. Now, let's start with the Python SDK. So the Python SDK, well, you have to know Python. So that's very important. And what it allows you to do is that not only the data science logic, the training, the algorithms, all of that, but also anything you need to get your model up and running, like your resources, like you need the compute, you need storage, you need all of those components as well. We'll talk about components in a bit. So all of that you can do in your Python SDK. If you need multiple resources and do scalability, well, you can have a for loop, right? So you can have for, and then there you go, scale as many resources as you need. So that's a great way to do it, and you're doing it in Python. So comfort zone there. Now, having said all that, of course, it has some cons, and this is where the CLI come into the picture. Where first of all, it's on Python. So what if you have a team where people prefer R? So I'm an R person, a little bit in Python, but I'm more comfortable in R. Maybe you have people doing Julia or some other languages. So here, what CLI allows you to do, first of all, it's in the Azure CLI, so the command line. So it allows you to do something very important, separating the data science logic from the cloud logic.
Okay.
So you can decide to do your model training in one language, and then when you talk about deploying, allocating resources into the cloud, then you do it in the CLI. You would have your YAML file, and then you fire it up. So that's great in terms of separation of logics. It's also great in terms of scalability. So in a nutshell, high level, these would be the points that would make you veer towards one or the other.
That's great. So now I get it, where to use what.
Absolutely. And this takes us also, since we're talking about model deployment, this takes us to the second article, which is Streamline Model Dev with Azure ML. And here it's looking into a specific part, which is how can you break down your logic into components and how you can build pipelines out of that. So I think you experimented with that. So how did you
Yes.
find it?
So one of the things which I liked how you can actually build components and use it in the pipelines,
Yeah.
but I was not able to imagine it in a real world scenario or a business process. So what exactly a component is and where I could use this?
So in a simple way, you could think of a component as an isolated logic
Okay.
of your code
Okay.
that you can reuse multiple times. Okay.
Cool.
So let's think about the data science process. You have multiple steps at a high level. You have the first part where you need to consolidate your data, then you need to clean that data, then maybe you need to do some feature engineering,
Yeah.
then maybe you start splitting your data, then maybe then choosing which algorithms to go for. Maybe you'll have a selection of algorithms, then comes parameter tuning and all sorts of things before you even get to your model assessment and then potentially responsible AI.
Yes.
So these are multiple steps that you would have. And the thing is that these steps can be reusable because every single model you'll do would have some similar steps. Some of them are a combination. So what you could do is when you could take each one of those steps and package it, I don't know if that's the right word, or into a component, and then it's you can register it within your Azure ML, and then the next time you have another model, if you need a data cleaning component, well, there you are, you've already had it, and you can utilize it. If you train in a component, you can have it as well. So that's what you would do, and it makes it super easy then to make it into a pipeline. So these are the pieces that allows you to create your pipeline one step after the other. So it helps you for modularity, it helps you for reproducibility, and it also helps you for code readability, because from a visual side, when you get to see those pipelines, it's very visual, you get to see the steps.
Yes.
So when you're joining a new project, you're like, oh, okay, I see what it's doing, and then I can deep dive, as opposed to like thousands of lines of code that you can't really make sense of.
Correct. I think it makes sense now. And that actually brings us to our third article, which is how you can actually take this. And so you talked about pipelines, and one of the reasons I think pipelines I learned about it is you can actually publish a model to production.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing which comes to my mind is, okay, I'm putting it on the internet. What about the security?
Exactly.
So this article actually covers how I can have my Azure ML managed endpoints, uh, which can be secured by Azure ML by default. It can have auto scaling capabilities,
Yep.
and it can have the blue green deployments. Now, to
Yeah.
be very honest, this was the first time I read about the blue green deployments, and it was hard for me to understand exactly, because I come from a developer background, and I considered it something similar to the web apps where you have multiple slots, and you have part of the traffic reaching to one slot, part of the traffic to another version of your application. So tell me more about what exactly the blue green deployments is, and maybe where the name comes from.
Well, it's very, very, very similar. So, and I love this little picture here that you could see. So the idea is that, so you have a model that you've already tested, and it's already deployed, and it's already out there, and it's given inferences, and your app relies on. Now, the reality of models is that sometimes they suffer from something called model drift, is that over time the accuracy may be reducing for a variety of reasons, and you would need to retrain those. So this means a new model that you'll have to deploy. Maybe your model, you had to change the logic in it because something in the business context had changed, so you needed to create potentially a new version of that model. So a lot of reasons why you would need an upgrade to the model. Now, what do? You're not going to shut down the existing model and then publish the other one, and then maybe the inferences of the new model might not be. We all know, like, the test of the real data. so the accuracy might be very low. So what you would do is something very similar. You would have your blue model, the one that was established, still continuing. Okay. You would have a green model, as you can see here, which is the new version. And you would allow it to also have some inferences. so that you could test it. And you can choose here on something that's very powerful. You can even choose for that green model to just take traffic but not give the inference, just for you to actually challenge it a little bit more. And then the moment you're confident the accuracy is good, it has passed the test of real data, then you can switch. So it's very, very similar to what you have just described.
That's great. So one new learning. What is
Absolutely. And all
blueprint
of
model?
that in Azure ML. So it's
Agree.
such an overarching platform. There's so much that you can do with it.
That's great. So let's talk about the day 4 then, Tirina.
Yes. So day 4 is all about responsible AI. Now, over the past weeks, we've talked about responsible AI principles. We've talked also about the importance of responsible AI, and I'm sure in your feed now, a lot of people are talking about this topic. So this week here is about how do you make it real? Let's really implement that responsible AI. Let's give it a thought. And what I really loved about this article is that it has 3-part components. So it first starts with a case of hospital readmission, which is quite a sensitive topic as well. And you might think maybe some populations might have some higher or lower readmission risk, and these are things that you might want to think of. So part 1 is all about getting that model trained on that data. So it's also a good refresher. It also allows you to test all the good things we just talked about in terms of deploying your model and all that. And then when you get to part 2 and part 3, okay, now let's dig into the responsible AI. Let's use all the tools that allow you to design your responsible AI dashboard. One thing that you'll get to learn is that you get to define your own scorecard, your own responsible AI components. You get to talk about topics like fairness, like what are those variables, features that are very sensitive that you need to make sure when they are different in specific cohorts of data, that some of them are not having lower score than others. And what I liked about this article is that you get to see here so many things in terms of analyzing the different errors. But before I get into those details, I want to show this little picture here that shows you all the different open source tools that do responsible AI that have been packaged into Azure ML Responsible AI. So a lot of it is from the open source community. A lot of it is Microsoft has been contributing to it. So you're kind of getting the state of the art of the people who have pushed further this reflection. So that's what, when we say responsible AI, these are the tool, and I encourage you to look them up. There's a lot of learning there. And this is the kind of views that you get to see. Like I have cohorts of data. Some of them are having higher or lower scores. So then I get to see in particular what has caused that. And you can build those dashboards for yourself. You can have very detailed confusion matrices. And then so at that point, you'll be able to create a dashboard that you can export into a PDF, and that could be a regular thing that you look at through your model. And then you can say with confidence, these are the errors that we have, these are the vulnerability that we have, this is how we retrained our model to account for those. So that's putting it in practice. You know, we fear a lot of things about AI, but if all the models that we build abide by those principles and we implement them, I think that's going to set everybody on a good foot.
That's great. One of the questions which I had, Talila, in this is, you showed us this open source features or modules which you can use it with Azure ML. Now my question is it accessible directly from the portal?
Yeah, so it's actually transparent for you. So you're not necessarily going to use Interpret ML directly. In the whole portal, the experience that you will have will look like this. So in the back end, these will be playing. And the good thing as well, speaking of components, speaking of pipelines, speaking of registry, you can also code all of these the components that you'd like to see in your responsible AI dashboard, so that you could reuse them again. Correct. So that way you don't have to recreate it all at once. And the code here does contain all of that, how you can create those components. So that was also a powerful thing to do.
Agree. That is amazing. And when you see all this together, now comes the question is, how do we bring this all together and streamline it together as an operation, right? And that brings up to our last article of the week, which is, how do you streamline your operations with Azure MLOps. Now, one of the views when so this is part of the sessions which was delivered in Ignite this year,
Yeah.
and one of the things which I took from a perspective of a developer is, in software development, you have a whole process of how you actually build your software, build
Yep.
pipelines, do CI/CD, and deploy your application and stuff like that. So I tried to take it from that perspective. I saw if I use GitHub, can I use GitHub in MLOps, right? I used to use GitHub Actions. Can I use that over here? And I found out that yeah, there is
Yep.
similarity to each one of them, and I was amazed that it doesn't restrict to that part, but there is more to it. And I
Absolutely.
wanted to know from you what are the things which are more than your normal DevOps cycle and which has been included in MLOps, and what is what it can support the data scientists and the engineers out
Absolutely. And that was a lot of learning for me as well. And I love this view here, and I took it from screenshots from the actual talk, and and oops, I think it's playing. Let's just stop it. Um, what this allows you to do, and as you can see here, is that from the point of defining a business goal to experimenting with your model here, we're still trying to see what it does, to build in a pipeline, to then train in your pipeline, to release in your pipeline, right? And then eventually doing some batch scoring. That's
there.
when
Okay.
you want to have multiple inferences at once, and then eventually having it go real time and linking it to your business app. So all of that is a process and it's a cycle, but it's also it can be circular because you might need to go back to specific steps and retrain your model and make changes. So that's a full process that MLOps allow you to do, so that you as a data scientist, you spend as much time as possible in this side here, which is the experimentation, which is looking at your algorithms, your parameters and all that, which is a job in itself, and it's a
Agree.
very heavy step. And how can we make it easy for you for all of these for all the surrounding parts of the process to be taken care of, and which are also important and necessary, because otherwise your model is not going to see
Not
the
good.
light of the day.
Correct.
And it's going to break every time you try to deploy it in a different environment or somebody else try to take it. So what MLOps does through Azure ML is that it gives you this full process, and it allows different people to work together. What I like to when you see here on the
Yes.
right is that there are multiple people that come to the
Correct.
picture: data scientist, data engineer. You have the business stakeholders as well that need to be on the loop. So it's never just the data scientist doing the machine learning by
Correct.
yourself.
100%.
Never. There's software developer like you who needs to put it in a business app somehow. So that collaboration has to be smooth. So that's also great to learn. I encourage also people who are not technical but who are team lead, managers, who need to understand how to use MLOps and how could that help them. So that was the key highlight for me overall. A great session. I encourage you to watch it. You will not regret it.
Actually, I was about to come to that point that I on your picture I saw the legends that it's not alone the data scientist who
No,
is doing it,
absolutely not.
and yes, it's a whole team effort, and that's why it's the ML ops, right? It's
Absolutely.
taking care of the operation. So this brings us to the end of the episode. I want to conclude it with this week is you start how to build models using Azure ML. You streamline your applications or your models in that case and your development using Azure ML. You go ahead and see how you can publish it to your online
Yeah.
endpoints. Bring responsible AI component of it. We talked about it in week 1, and this is where we go into deep dive into that. And then how you streamline it with MLOps. So stay tuned for the coming week as well. And this is where you go deep dive
Hands
into
on.
it, and we are excited about that. So thanks a lot for joining us today. Thank you, Tilila,
Yeah, thank you,
and
Hatim.
we are excited for the next week. See you next week
Absolutely.
then.
It's
Thank
going to be
you.
the hands-on week. So
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you. Have a
Take
good
care.
day. Bye bye.